So the next panel, Andrea Alliston and Kate Simpson, they're going to revolutionize your content strategy. And so I just wanted to take a moment to introduce them. I know that you're going to explain who you are and what you do, but Andrea, this is the Canadian panel. Don't let Kate's accent fool you. Andrea is the Chief Knowledge Officer at Fasken, and and I would suggest one of the most innovative law firms today. I spoke to a few firms, so I like a little bit for networking, right? I was speaking to somebody earlier, and they said, I really want to talk to somebody who has recent experience building out a KM team, right? To follow up on the panel from this morning. Andrea is one of those people. Sylvia is here from her team. So again, take full advantage of the experience of the folks on the panel. Kate has similar experience, but I specifically wanted to take this because Kate's profile info is wrong at the conference. I'm going to be very selfish here for one moment. 15 years ago, before I started Fireman and Company, I was a baby consultant who had a lot to learn. And so I did an engagement for a firm in Toronto with another consultant who had just come over, and that was Kate. And Kate knows she taught me stuff back then, particularly about user experience and user journeys, that to this day informs the work that I do and what my team does. So 15 years later, I'm really proud to say that as of yesterday, Kate is my colleague and not a client. And welcome to Fireman and Company.
Thank you, Joshua. I don't know what to follow with that, and perhaps we won't, except to say I've learned tons from Joshua, as I think we all have. The entire industry has learned the last 15 years from Joshua, and I look forward to learning way more now being part of Fireman and Company. So we'll keep intros really short because of that. So, yes, down. So this is why I couldn't reveal my slides. So revolutionizing knowledge delivery. Why are we here?
We're here because I've been saying for a long time, sorry, Andrea Alliston, in case you missed it earlier, I'm a partner at Fasken and head our knowledge and innovation. You can't use CKO, Joshua. It will really mess up my personal tax situations. Please don't do that. I know it sounds arrogant when I say partner. It has nothing to do with that. So I've been saying for a long time that it should be easier to practice law. And I'm sort of thinking that it's actually gotten harder as I've been doing this. But I'm wondering if that's really about to change and that there is some promise that there are things we can be doing to make the practice of law easier. But I hope so, because lawyers are dreaming big. And in order to do that, we have to get very creative with our content management in this brave new world. And we really want to make these lawyers' dreams come true, and this is the way we will do that.
So we need to start with why. Why are we here? We need to deal with the realities of AI. It is wishful thinking that we could just release the AI hounds on our data, on our content, and some kind of AI magic will happen. But it's not just, it's really not just us that's wishful thinking.
The lawyers are wishful thinking, and I found this to be really interesting. Okay, I want to be very clear. It is not reasoning yet. It gives the illusion of reasoning. Even these recent developments with OpenAI, it's chaining it together. It's not really reasoning. But the lawyers are being fooled into the illusion that it is reasoning, and their expectations of what this is going to do are very high. So a couple of examples, like, in the litigation space, thinking, well, I've got this new fact pattern, I want to apply the law to that, and I want the AI to do that, and then tell me where X, Y, and Z and how I need to prepare my argument, whatever it is, right? It can't really do that right now, but that's where the lawyers are going, and that's what they're thinking. On the corporate side, I had a lawyer say, so I've got the transaction documents, and I've got the minute book, and I just want it to tell me everything I need to do from a corporate perspective to make sure everything is done. I'm like, yeah, maybe not. But that's a good illustration of how they are starting to think.
Yeah, and it's driven by people like Sam Altman saying that we've reached human level reasoning, which of course we haven't. We've reached the illusion of human level reasoning. But with a couple of years now with AI, oh, I'm so sorry. Did you hear anything? Anything? Okay, good. Um, Thank you, Patrick. So with a couple of years worth of AI projects under various industries' belts, there's this really interesting RAND research paper from August 2024 that said the second most common root cause of failure for AI projects is lack of suitable data. And it's quite detailed. It goes through the types of difficulties with data, about quality, about suitability. And the thing that jumped out at me here was the second piece, which is legacy data sets were intended for certain purposes, but AI requires context about why things happen, as opposed to simply what happened. And we need our domain experts to be involved in that data cleanup. Which brings us nicely on. Thank you, Alex, for IA before AI. So a long time ago, I was an information architect. When we were learning to be information architects in this brand new web thing, this was the Venn diagram. It was about users, content, and context. And what's surprising now is actually that the content and context has become more and more important where AI is concerned. Hence why IA before AI has become such the phrase that everyone uses, and there's a reason of it, and it's that the data layer doesn't contain the content and context required by AI. The data layer is great, it's the first layer, but the second layer, the KM layer, the content layer, is where context and nuance lives, which is great because this is where we live as well. So let's, is it still me? So, so what do we talk about when we talk about content? This is how my brain thinks about data, information, content, documents, knowledge, and records. And I think this taxonomy and understanding that we're talking about the same things is really important. So this is how my brain thinks about it. But Andrea will give you a few law firm examples of that.
And I will admit my brain is not quite as organized as Kate's, so this is helpful for me. But you can see, I mean, knowledge, we all think are model precedents, could be other things, could be a website, a SharePoint list, a toolkit, whatever you've got on the knowledge side. Your documents, very clear, your client record, and the data piece about that client, maybe their address. But I guess for me, again, where it's my brain is not quite as clear as Kate's, I'm like, okay, so what about industry? What is industry? Is it a piece of data? Is it context? Does that vary depending upon what you're talking about? So what is the answer, Kate?
Well, everyone...
no, seriously, what is the answer?
Industry is part of the metadata, which is a descriptor of the data. And the industry itself doesn't sit by itself in some long list, unconnected, disconnected? Either disconnected from everything else around it. It describes the data. And the more that we describe the data through descriptions, we build out into records, into content, into information, into into knowledge, sorry. Because this is, I think, the greatest description. I kind of use a gaping void illustration in almost every single one of my presentations internally at the firm. But this one I love because it describes for me the journey that we're all taking, the data strategies that we're doing, the data focus that we're doing, slowly gets built upon using connections, context, and nuance. And I think that to get to that impact with AI is going to require us to look at connections, context, and nuance.
So I love this title, Constellation of Vital Phenomena, and that our content is probably a constellation of vital phenomena. So Kate, for those who don't recognize it, why this book title?
So Rebecca Davis-Polk, Where are you? Hello, darling. Um, uh, so Rebecca probably doesn't remember this, but she recommended this book to me. I don't know if anyone else has read this book, Anthony Mara. It's a novel, but it's superb. And when I read it, there's a really interesting definition of a constellation of vital phenomena, and it's about a constellation being connected, being let me read it to you. A constellation being connected units that are vital to the whole. And Andrea and I are bookies. We, not bookies as in gambling people. We like to read a lot. It's like foodies. Foodies make sense. Bookies does not, right? Anyway, we read a lot. We have book clubs all over the place. And for the alert among you, you may have noted that there are a number of book titles scattered throughout this presentation, and there are more to come.
So, we've been spending a lot of time over the last years focusing on how we can retrieve, reuse, and reimagine content. We're going to start with retrieval. So, organizing and enriching to retrieve. Again, the amount of focus that a lot of us have spent on gathering collections, tagging those collections so that somebody can either search for the content or browse for the content. It's all about retrieval, right? So this is our knowledge bank. This is pretty standard, I guess, if you have a knowledge collection or a knowledge bank or sort of platform to surface the content. The content is in there, they're the documents. Most of the tagging we do today is all about that content. What type is it? What practice is it related to? What work is it related to? So it's all about the content. And this works, whether you're browsing or searching, it is retrieval. Moving on to the next, though, I think the next thing is to really think about, okay, rather than retrieval, can we display information to people? And I know there's probably some people in this room who have worked on this in the past and have had some success with this. So this idea of, okay, it looks like you are revising a closing agenda. Would you like to see the related closing document precedents? Or you're drafting an affidavit. Do you want to see the practice note that relates to this that was just recently for recent changes? So this idea that you are, guiding somebody to something else that might be useful at the time. So this is where we think, retrieval and then maybe to display. But what happens when we start to think about reusing content?
So reuse is about reusing the same content but in different ways. So this is a traditional one that we do today. So we draft a practice note, and the practice note can be seen and used in multiple forms. So it can be used as a precedent, it can be used as thought leadership, in a blog article, etc., whether internal or external, plus for training purposes. And we have to describe that same practice note in multiple ways for that reuse to actually happen.
Very manual. But what if we started thinking a little bit more creatively? What if we were able to actually not just reuse content, but to repurpose it? So almost transform it into a different type of content. So this is where we start to go a little bit further. So stay with us. I think the next part of our presentation requires some imagination. So the example we have here is, taking experience management data, adding a curated document collection to then create your own internal What's Market database. I'm now creating something new out of two other pieces of content or information or context that I had. And then maybe, I don't know, maybe I use that internal What's Market database as a fancy new clause library that I hook up with some AI to make that available. So again, just really thinking rather than just reuse, can we repurpose content? So Kate, on the litigation side?
Yeah, on the litigation side, this was something we were attempting to do at Bennett Jones. Similar to the transactional side, but taking your internal brief bank and then combining it with external case law and secondary sources from outside the firm. You add a bit of AI magic, which is what that is. And you can create fact patterns, arguments, and citations. And what we had started to do was pull arguments out of brief banks, connect them to their citations, and then create kind of Kanban boards of arguments, so that during the prep session for litigators, you were connecting the arguments within the different briefs outside of the briefs, and then connected to their case law, so that you could actually cite the correct argument for the correct case law.
So this is me. As we were preparing for this session, and Kay was mentioning this earlier today about those of you who are lucky. Kate accused me of data arrogance, not ignorance, arrogance. Because as we were talking about all these possibilities and all how we could take content and then add the context and repurpose it or reformat it, I'm like, well, you just go to the data lake and you get it from the data lake, and all the connections would be in the data lake. I kept referring to the data lake. So we are lucky at Fasken. We do have one, and I think that will help us if we want to start reimagining and rethinking about our content. But the data is a key piece of this, as we've heard through the sessions today. So Kate, if you don't have a data lake, what are you doing?
Well, it looks a bit messier, obviously, but you're going to need IT and your manual connections. I think ultimately, even if you're doing it in an Excel for now, we are all going to have to get smarter about our internal data. We cannot rely on all of these wonderful, including Courtroom Insight, these data companies who are going to do it all for us. It's not going to happen. We have to take charge of our own data. And so at some point, we are going to have to connect these data points into some sort of pond or bigger.
And I think it's actually really hard. So again, people were talking about this earlier today, but even with the data lake, the context that you're applying to the data, you might need different context in different situations, and understanding that, managing all of that, and getting everyone in the organization on board about using the data in different ways and for different purposes, and that you need to think about how you collect the data and you provide the context in order to make those things happen, is a huge change management effort. So I'm not so arrogant anymore. Ha ha ha. So this is where it gets fun, and Clippy can do it. So for our third phase of thinking about content differently, we actually want to start reimagining the content. So what are the expectations that our users are starting to have with respect to the way they will interact, access, leverage, and use content because of the advent of generative AI? And I think we need to really think about that and understand what is possible and what is not. So let's start with answers, not just results. So I think we can probably all anticipate that this is coming, if it is not already at your front door, as far as lawyers asking to be able to query information within the organization and get these answers. So whether it be helping somebody understand what's coming next in a series of tasks, or asking a research question rather than with all those Boolean terms, just asking it in a true plain language way and getting an answer. But I think the trick is getting an answer. Mm-hmm. And will they accept that answer?
Yeah, and this is the Holy Grail. As if anyone's been following Google over the last 20 years, this is the Holy Grail for them, and indeed it is iManager's Holy Grail, because lawyers want answers, not results. They want the answer just there, rather than pouring through lots of results and guesswork. I mean, this is the other thing: is not only just getting a good answer, but getting one that's not a guess. Even if it's a good guess, we need specificity and we need accuracy. And so actually being able to clarify the instructions being given and having a chat with the search engine, for example, to gather additional context around what someone is looking for, is how we will achieve this. But how we do that is the hard yards.
Very, very hard. And I also think, again, our users are impatient, and there was discussion earlier about it's a new skill that you have to learn to interact with. Asking questions is very different than searching for how you get to what you want. You can't just scroll through the 100 results. I have done that before to get to 75, and you need to actually ask and refine your questioning. So there's a big thing around our users, and can we actually get there? So it requires context.
Yeah, and a lot of training. Obviously, Google has not just been sitting around for the last 20 years to improve. They have been training their data using massive amounts of metadata, thanks to lots of search engine optimizer roles in all of the industries who have been dutifully tagging their websites. They've been using metadata and multiple types of metadata to get to what is not quite answers. So we have a long way to go internally to actually get our content to such a stage where we can give reliable answers to lawyers, because who knows what kind of questions they're going to be asking. There is a very long tail of unique search journeys happening at all of our firms. We cannot possibly predict all of the answers to that. So figuring out how we're going to do that is going to be one of the greatest challenges, I think. Well, I'm excited anyway.
Yes, all excited. So this one is probably closer to old Clippy, so I think the risk here is a bit higher. But this idea that you're trying to anticipate what somebody might need and help them along. So, this reminder to the junior associate, you should be filing your PPSA. Sorry, that's a Canadian security filing. Little Canadianism there. Here's the draft instructions to do that. Or, reminding a partner about their defense, their statement of defense that is due. So, will people find this helpful? Is this great for risk management? Does this help coaching, people understanding what's coming along? I think there's an interesting question there.
Yeah, and some of this, so some of the work we've been doing, some of us have been doing around process improvement and process mapping. We're going to need matter level, phase, and task to know where to know where a lawyer is in a process, to add that additional context of being able to anticipate what's next. What's the next task that's going to be on the list, to be able to properly anticipate what's happening.
Then our next one, and I think I'm quite excited about this idea because, okay, so if you draft and you have in your collection like a solid precedent that's for a particular situation, that situation doesn't occur very often, right? It's like there's all these nuances and variations of that, and right now we expect people to be able to adapt that content to their particular situation. Is there potential for, with context and the AI to actually start doing things like pre-populating a questionnaire to generate a document that is very, very responsive to the situation that the lawyer is in? Or, the question where somebody's asking, can you adapt these arguments that you made before one justice to a different justice on a different file? Will this be possible to actually have the content be adaptive and yet really founded in core materials that people know and understand? Can I do that before I retire?
Nope. Well, maybe. I think always the proviso is how accurate do you need this to be, because that is going to be how long it's actually going to take to get us there. But I think I can't remember where I read this, but I read content is a wrapper for data, and what's interesting about that quote is that AI needs you to describe your data and tell it the what, the how, the why. And, I've been doing quite a lot of reading around graph rags, etc. I think knowledge graphs, and I don't know whether anyone has read Adelshaw Goddard's recent report on their use of AI, but content chunking is also going to be in our futures to be able to make this reality. Because if we're going to try and get to the holy grail for some of this stuff, as well as the insights and impacts that we've been talking about, we need to be able to link a lot more of our data and our content together if we're going to provide contextual answers to the things that lawyers are actually asking for.
And remember that thing about lawyers being impatient? Like if it's not going to actually help you be faster,
Right.
like they won't use it. So the final one that we had as far as how we can reimagine content is this idea of doing insights and not just data. So how can we leverage artificial intelligence and the context and the content together to be able to provide those insights as I'm working on something? So, you know, when does this client require the tenant to pay for improvements? If I could answer that rather than going back and looking at the whole record of all the different the different deals we worked on for the client, that would be really helpful in the context of when I need to have that answer. And then also, you know, what would be the reasonable settlement range for this client on this file? And so those are the types of things that I think the insights will actually really help people practice more efficiently and effectively. And that would actually make practicing law easier.
Right.
But what does it need?
But it's all an illusion.
Yes, it's an illusion, but I'm okay with that illusion because it's, you know, so my colleague Hoare he describes LLMs as fancy maths, statistics, and billions of data points. And he's not wrong on that. But I'm okay if it's an illusion so long as it is answering questions. These questions do not require reasoning. They require, you know, that analysis, the statistics, and the data points to help answer that and give you the range.
Yeah.
But also the how accurate is it will
Quite.
make a difference.
So I believe it is actually only our imaginations that are going to limit us in figuring out how to organize and enrich our content for repurposing and reimagining properly. And I, going back to knowledge graphs and content chunking, we're going to need these tools and the companies that are sitting outside and some of them inside to help us actually pull all of that together, the data layer plus the content layer. But our lawyers are dreaming big, and that imagination, those imaginations are running wild, as Andrea has.
Yes. So we've been running a lot of workshops with our practice groups at the firm to just, again, blue sky thinking about how they think AI could help their practice. And it's been fascinating to me. We've gone to practice groups for years saying, hey, how could we help you? What would it take to improve your workflows, your practice? Crickets. But all of a sudden, oh, this AI, it's magical. I'm going to tell you everything that I think it could do. And even though, again, the point was made earlier, it's actually non-generative AI that they need. It is something that we had 10 years ago, and we could have done this for you a long time ago. But it has somehow unleashed their imaginations and given them the freedom to really articulate where their pain points are and how they would really like to see practice evolve. Some of them are very fantastical, but others are actually practical. And so a little story is when we started with the use cases, we had them, like they were quite big. And then we looked at them going, okay, we have to break these down into very, very minute pieces because we can do the first two, but there's no way we can do the second two. So we've had to really rethink and manage expectations about what is possible today, and then we'll put it on the list for tomorrow.
So, Andrea, what are our tomorrows?
All of our tomorrows, tomorrow. Another great book.
Another great book.
Do you want to go to the next one? So I think what we are looking at and what we've talked about today are like really smart workflows. But as Kate said, we then have to, like for real, break down the work that is being done into chunks of phases, tasks maybe, so that we have that data to align with the content, to align with what's going on, and that the AI can use as the context. Like we need that context. Intelligent chatbots, we will not be able to get away with not addressing that in our organizations, given what's happening in their personal lives. If I can give a list of all the contents of my pantry and it comes up with great recipes, like I'm thinking they are thinking we can do something in the law firm. Connected knowledge, so this idea of marrying up the content together, coaching and education, how much can we really make use of our content and our data to actually help people in the moment when they really need it. And then finally, that risk management piece, reminding people of things that haven't been done on a file. Like that, I think our general counsel's offices might be quite excited about that. I'm not going to mention this to them quite yet.
And the thing I will add here is going all the way back to Sally's opening. I have so much to thank you for, Sally. Did you know that Sally she interviewed me at my very first job, and I learnt, I got my KM stripes at Freshfields Brookhouse Derringer under Sally. I'm so lucky.
Really?
Yeah.
I did.
You didn't know that?
Sally did the first strategy at my other law firm. Like I learned everything I know about KM from Sally.
We are not worthy. But going back to her tacit knowledge, the coaching and education is very interesting because I think, as her slide that I took photos of says about the human-based versus the explicit, I think there's something in the coaching and education and the training of our lawyers that could be delivered through AI, but we have to manage that risk at the same time. And some of these tools are going to be exciting to play with. So, some takeaways. We've all had lunch, so this slide won't make you hungry.
Me? You?
Well, you do these.
Oh, okay. So I kind of think the toolkit is important. And I think for this room, it's important because you might be the only person at your organization who's actually thinking about this toolkit that you will need if you want to start leveraging and making the most of your content in this brave new world that we will enter. So this idea, like your data infrastructure, how that will all play together, connecting your knowledge, how are you organizing, where is your content, where is your knowledge, all of those sorts of things, and what you're going to need from a technical perspective to make all of this work. So it might be lonely in your organization because you might be the only one thinking this broadly.
But we're here with you.
Yes,
The rest of us are here
You can
with
always
you.
call us for moral support. And it is not going to be easy. If we thought that the tagging of content that we've been doing for the past has been hard, I think this is going to be equally hard, but there will be AI to help us along. So we'll be able to do more, but it will still not be that easy.
Yeah. And I guess my takeaway with this is start thinking about the start. How will you actually start this process? Thinking about it can be frustrating. There is a hard yards and heavy lifting as part of this prep to get there. But I think we have all started. It's just making sure that we've figured out that this is the journey that we're on.
By the way, can I just ask, who knows what hard yards is? Okay, I told you we had to translate it.
Hard yards. So come on, UK people. Thank you.
Alex.
One person. Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Sally. You spent enough time there. That's good. Hard yards. So I had to say heavy lifting. Is that everyone knows heavy lifting? Okay, I'm gonna have to adapt.
I asked
okay.
Copilot what hard yards meant for an American audience, and we got heavy lifting. So there we go.
So AI understands what hard yards is.
And I think that's us.
And yes.
Questions?
Yes.
Thoughts?
You've covered everything. No questions.
Yay.
Thank you so much.